My name is Noah West, and I have exactly 3 hobbies. First, eating cereal at midnight. Second, rewatching the same 3 episodes of cooking competitions, even though I can't cook. Third, staring at Marcus Reed from across the cafeteria like a guy who has completely, irreversibly lost his mind. Marcus Reed. Just his name was enough to make half the school lose all sense of reason. He was Westbrook Academy's star quarterback, the kind of person who could walk down a hallway and somehow change the temperature of it. Not because he was loud. Not because he demanded attention. If anything, it was worse. Marcus was quiet, effortlessly cool. He had a face that looked carved with unfair precision, dark brown skin that seemed to catch every bit of light, and warm brown eyes that had probably ruined lives. Mine specifically. I had been silently, dramatically, and very inconveniently in love with Marcus Reed for 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. Not that I was counting. Jessie, my best friend, was the one counting. Day 800 and something, she announced on a Tuesday morning, dropping her lunch tray onto the table across from me. "And you're staring again." "I'm not staring," I said, while very obviously staring. She raised an eyebrow. "Noah, you've been holding that spoon in midair for 4 minutes. You haven't taken a bite." I lowered it. "I was thinking about." I said nothing. Jessie stole one of my fries. "You are so in love with that man, it's embarrassing. Please keep your voice down." "Or what? He'll hear me and finally discover the boy who's been looking at him like he personally invented gravity." I groaned. "I hate you." "No, you don't." She grinned. "Have you ever considered, I don't know, talking to him?" "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because that would destroy the entire system I have in place." Jessie blinked. "What system?" "The one where I suffer quietly and never do anything about my feelings." She stared at me for a beat, then shook her head like I was a failed science fair project, which honestly felt fair. Here was the thing about Marcus Reed. He wasn't just popular. He was untouchable in that polished, impossible way that made everyone else seem slightly unreal by comparison. Teachers loved him. Students orbited him. He'd led the Westbrook Wolves to 3 straight regional championships. He volunteered at the youth center on weekends. He thanked the lunch staff by name. Once, he stopped to help a freshman pick up a pile of dropped books, and the kid had looked like he might cry from the shock of being treated kindly. And me? I was Noah West. 3rd row in English. Pretty good at writing. Medium brown hair that refused to cooperate with human society. A remarkable talent for saying the worst possible thing at exactly the worst possible time. I was the kind of person who lived comfortably in the background of other people's stories. There was no logical reason Marcus Reed should ever notice me, which is why when I stepped out of English that afternoon, turned the corner and slammed directly into 6'2" of warm, solid human being, I was pretty sure my soul briefly left my body. My papers flew everywhere. My bag slipped off my shoulder. I stumbled backward, and a hand caught my arm before I hit the floor. "Whoa," Marcus said. "You good?" That voice alone should have been illegal. I looked up. Marcus Reed was holding my arm and looking at me with a small crease between his brows, like he was genuinely concerned. And somehow I didn't die, which felt medically improbable. "I am," I said.
"Fine."
"I'm fine. I was walking and then you were there, and I did not expect you to be so." I stopped.
"So what?" he asked.
"Present," I finished weakly. He blinked. "Present."
"Yes." "No."
"I mean, sorry. I crashed into you." I immediately bent to grab my papers. He bent down too, and we nearly knocked heads. "Sorry," I blurted, jerking back. "It's okay," he said, and just kept gathering my scattered essays. I stood there, watching Marcus Reed pick my schoolwork off the hallway floor like this was a normal thing that happened to people. He handed the papers back and glanced at the top sheet. "You wrote about inherited grief in the road?" I swallowed. "For the essay prompt, yeah." "We had the same prompt," he said. "I wrote about survival instinct." "Oh." I nodded too fast. Yeah, that's good. Valid. Very valid interpretation." He looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Then he said, Noah, right? My brain stopped functioning. You're in my English class.
He knew my name. He knew my name.
Yeah, I said, summoning what I hoped resembled casualness and probably landing somewhere near medical distress. That's me. He nodded once, picked up his own bag, and headed down the hallway. I stood there for 30 full seconds before texting Jessie. He knows my name. Her reply came back 4 seconds later. I am screaming in a bathroom stall right now. That was Tuesday. By Friday, everything had changed. Not because I did anything. Obviously, I would never. No. The universe intervened in the form of Mr. Callahan, our English teacher, who walked into class with the expression of a man about to casually ruin lives. All right, he said, clapping once. Partner project. I've already assigned the pairs. No swaps. The room groaned. Then he started reading names. And then he said, Noah West and Marcus Reed. Somewhere behind me, Jessie made a strangled noise. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I was too busy staring at my desk and trying not to pass out. Across the room, I felt Marcus glance my way. When I finally looked up, he gave me an easy nod, like this was completely normal and not the most destabilizing event of my academic career. Mr. Callahan kept talking about a project on identity and belonging in modern American fiction. I absorbed maybe 40% of it. The other 60% of my brain was occupied with the fact that Marcus Reed had said my name 2 days ago, and now I was apparently going to spend the next 3 weeks working beside him. We exchanged numbers in class. Marcus texted first. Jessie nearly had a public breakdown over that. His message was simple. Library tomorrow after school? We can pick the book. I replied. Works for me. What I wanted to send was, yes, absolutely, I would clear my calendar for the next century if you asked. But I retained a tiny fragment of dignity. The library, the next afternoon, was almost empty. A few students were doing homework in the corner. Mrs. Potts sat behind the desk knitting something aggressively yellow. Marcus was already there when I arrived, seated at a table in the back with a notebook open in front of him and a pen tucked behind one ear. He'd changed out of his uniform. Gray hoodie, dark joggers. Casual enough to be devastating. Hey, he said when I sat down. Hey. He slid a list across the table. A few options. I looked down. Giovanni's Room, Call Me By Your Name, Less. A Little Life. I stared. These are all gay novels, I said, before my brain could stop my mouth. Marcus looked at me evenly.
Yeah.
I figured identity might be easier to talk about if we picked something with more going on. Is that a problem? No, I said immediately. No, not at all. His gaze lingered. I've read all of them, I added. Giovanni's Room twice. A flicker of something crossed his face. You have? I read a lot. I know, he said. I went completely still. He said it so casually, like he hadn't just dropped a sentence that implied he had, at some point, been paying attention to me. Then he looked back down at the list. I was thinking Giovanni's Room. There's a lot there about self-deception and identity. He was right, and then worse than right, he started talking about it. And Marcus Reed was smart. Not just school smart in the way people say about athletes when they're trying to sound surprised.
No. He was thoughtful.
Sharp. Engaged. He made an argument about David's dishonesty functioning as its own kind of cruelty, and I got so caught up in the conversation that for 20 whole minutes, I forgot to be nervous. Then his knee bumped mine under the table. My entire nervous system rebooted. Sorry, he said. Fine, I answered, in a voice at least 1 octave too high. We kept working. Mrs. Potts brought us tea at some point unasked. We split up chapters. We outlined our first section. When we packed up to leave, Marcus slung his bag over one shoulder and said, almost absent-mindedly, You're easy to talk to. I looked at him. He gave me that almost smile, barely there. I wasn't expecting that. What were you expecting? He considered. I don't know. Something different. Then he zipped his bag and asked, Same time next week?
Sure, I said.
He walked out. I sat back down and stared at the table for a full minute before calling Jessie. She answered instantly. How bad is it? He said I'm easy to talk to. There was a pause.
Then, okay.
I need you to remain calm. I am calm. Noah, you sound like a tea kettle. She wasn't wrong. Over the next 2 weeks, we met 4 more times. Twice at the library. Once on a bench near the sports field after his late practice. Once at my house, where my mother treated Marcus's arrival like a royal state visit and brought out enough snacks to feed a minor conference. Your mom is amazing, Marcus said, reaching for his third plate of what she called a few light bites, which included sandwiches, fruit skewers, cheese, and cookies. She's going to adopt you if you're not careful, I told him. He laughed. A real laugh. Bright and surprised and completely unguarded. And that, unfortunately, made everything worse. Because my crush had been manageable when it was from a distance. It had been a fantasy, safe, abstract, dramatic in a way that cost me nothing except emotional stability. But this Marcus, the one sitting at my dining table with his sleeves pushed up, laughing at my mother's cheese board and explaining James Baldwin like it mattered deeply to him. This Marcus was a problem. Now, it wasn't just his face. It was the way he chewed the end of his pen when he was thinking. The way he tapped the table when he was irritated with his own wording. The way he actually listened when I spoke like my thoughts were worth hearing. I was in serious trouble. Then, during the 3rd week, everything shifted. We were back at the library, going over the final paragraph of our essay. My laptop sat between us, and both of us leaned in to look at the screen. We were close. Closer than usual. I turned to say something at the same moment he did. Our faces ended up inches apart. Neither of us moved. His eyes dropped to my mouth for one brief, unmistakable second. Then he leaned back, picked up his pen, and said, in a perfectly steady voice, "The conclusion's good." Yeah, I managed. It's good. I went home and stared at my ceiling for 2 hours. For inches. That was all it took to alter the atmosphere of my entire life. The party happened on a Friday, 3 weeks after we turned in the project and got an A-, which Mr. Callahan called the most emotionally intelligent analysis he'd read in years. Marcus texted me, "We should celebrate." I responded with 3 thumbs-up emojis like a person with absolutely no instinct for romance. So Jessie threw a party.
Of course she did.
She had the house for it, the parents for it, and the personality for it. By 8 o'clock, the place was full of music, lights, people pressed into every room, and the kind of chaos Jessie considered ideal. I made my way to the kitchen for a drink, because I'm always more functional when my hands have something to do. Marcus showed up 15 minutes later. The whole room noticed. That was just the kind of gravity he had. He spotted me across the crowd and smiled, fully, openly, directly at me, and a girl standing nearby actually whispered, "Oh my God." Honestly, same. He came over. We talked. We drank. Around 10, Jessie appeared with the expression she wore when she was about to make someone else's life dramatically more difficult. "We're playing Truth or Dare," she announced.
"We're too old for that," I said.
"You're 17, she said. "Sit down." A small group gathered in the back garden. Marcus sat across from me, looking mildly entertained by the whole thing. At first it was harmless. Stupid dares. Embarrassing confessions. The usual. Then Jessie turned to Marcus. "Truth or dare?" He leaned back. "Dare." Her smile sharpened. "I dare you to kiss the person in this circle you find most attractive." The group erupted on cue. I stared into my drink because I was not about to watch Marcus kiss some gorgeous girl while I maintained polite eye contact and died quietly. I heard movement. Footsteps. Then they stopped right in front of me. I looked up. Marcus was standing there. The whole circle went silent. So did my brain. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," I whispered back. He crouched in front of me until we were eye level. Then he took the cup from my hand and set it on the ground like he was calmly clearing the scene. One warm hand came up to my jaw. "Okay," he asked. I couldn't speak, so I nodded. Then he kissed me. Not a joke. Not a quick, thoughtless stare. A real kiss. Slow and warm and certain, like this was something he had considered before deciding to do it. The world disappeared. When the noise of the group finally rushed back in, it came all at once. Shouting, laughter, Jesse making a sound that was probably illegal in several states. Marcus pulled back just enough to look at me. "I've wanted to do that for longer than is probably cool to admit," he said. I stared at him. "How long?" His smile broke, small and bright. "Since you crashed into me in the hallway and called me present." I covered my face. "That is the worst thing I've ever said." "I know," he said. I liked it. Jesse appeared beside us, glowing with self-satisfaction. "I would just like it officially noted that I made this happen." "Jesse," I said. "Yes. Thank you. Please leave." She left happily. She had already won. Marcus stayed beside me for the rest of the night. At midnight, when the party had thinned and the music had softened, he walked me to my car. "Can I take you out?" he asked. "Like on a date?" He looked amused. "Yeah, properly." I tried not to sound as breathless as I felt. "Yeah, you can." He squeezed my hand once, then stepped back. When I got home, I had 3 texts from Jesse, all emoji-based and incomprehensible, and one from Marcus. "Good night, Noah." I read it 19 times. Our first date was at a small Italian place, 2 towns over. Later, I realized that hadn't been accidental. At the time, I was too focused on the warm light, the good food, and the fact that Marcus was sitting across from me in a dark blue jacket that should have come with a warning label. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about growing up with 4 older sisters and claimed they were solely responsible for whatever social skills he possessed. I told him about my dad's love of terrible action movies and how every Sunday of my childhood involved explosions and bad dialogue. Marcus asked questions and actually remembered the answers. He brought things up again later in the conversation, tiny details I'd almost forgotten I'd said, and it made me feel seen in a way so precise it was almost frightening. When we left, the night was cool. "This was good," he said. "Very good," I agreed. He stopped walking and turned to me. "I want to do it again." "I'd like that." He kissed me outside the restaurant, one hand light at my waist, and for a second I forgot every coherent thought I'd ever had. Then, when we pulled apart, I asked the question that had already started pressing at the edges of everything. "Are you going to tell people about this?" His face changed subtly, but enough. "I want to," he said. "I just need a little time." That was the first crack. Small but real. I understood it. He was Marcus Reed, football star, school golden boy, everybody's favorite. Coming out wasn't simple, and I wasn't going to force him. But a little time turned out to be more complicated than either of us wanted. The following Monday, I heard in the cafeteria that Marcus was going to prom with Priya Singh. Jessie grabbed my arm before I could do anything stupid. "Talk to him first," she said. So I texted him. "Can we talk?" He replied almost immediately. "After practice. 5 p.m. Bleachers." When I got there, he was already sitting halfway up, still in practice clothes, water bottle in hand. "I heard about prom," I said. "About Priya." He looked out at the field for a moment. "Yeah. I was going to tell you." "Then tell me." He turned the bottle between his palms. "Our families have known each other forever. Her parents and my mom have been talking about prom for over a year. I said yes back in February before this." He looked at me then, and his expression was honest enough to hurt. "My mom doesn't know," he said quietly. "Nobody does." "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since I was 15. There was so much in the way he said it. Weariness, caution, the strain of carrying something alone for too long. I let out a slow breath. "Okay." He frowned slightly. "Okay. I'm not thrilled about the prom thing," I admitted. "It stings. But I get why you're not ready. I'm not going to pressure you." I held his gaze. "I just can't be a secret forever." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." "Can you talk to Priya?" I asked. "Honestly?" He looked surprised. "You think I should?" "I think she might understand more than you expect." He was quiet for a while after that. Then he asked, "What are you doing prom night?" "Probably eating cereal and making bad choices." Something warm settled into his expression. "Give me some time," he said. "I'll fix it." 2 weeks later, he climbed through my bedroom window at 11:30 at night like a complete lunatic. I nearly screamed. He landed lightly on my floor, glanced around my room, and said, "You really do eat crackers in bed." "That is not the point," I hissed. "Why are you here?"
His face softened.
"I talked to Priya." I sat down on the edge of my bed, and a smile pulled at his mouth.
She cried.
Then she called me an idiot for waiting so long. I stared. "Seriously?" She asked if I was seeing someone. I said yes. She asked who. He looked at me, openly amused now. She said she always thought you were cute. I dropped my face into my hands. "Absolutely not." He laughed, then shifted closer. "She's going to prom with her girlfriend," he said. "Apparently they've been together for 6 months." I looked up. "We go to school with a deeply unserious number of secrets." "Apparently." Then his expression turned gentler. "I wanted to tell you in person," he said. "I know I'm not ready for the whole school yet, but I'm trying. And I need you to know this isn't about being ashamed of you."
He paused.
"I'm scared," he said quietly. "That's different." I looked at him for a long time before nodding. "I know." He touched my face then, careful and warm, and the room seemed to narrow around us. "Can I stay for a little while?" he asked. I should have said no. Instead, I kissed him. What passed between us that night stayed ours, soft, tentative, honest, and full of the kind of wonder that comes with finally reaching something you've both been afraid to name. Later, we lay side by side in the quiet, speaking in low voices and smiling into the dark like two people who knew life had just changed. When he slipped out through the window before sunrise, he pressed a kiss to my temple and whispered, "Go back to sleep." I didn't. Not for a while. 2 weeks before prom, someone shoved a note into my locker. "We know about you and Reed. Back off or we'll tell everyone." My stomach dropped. Jessie read it and went very, very still. "You have to tell him," she said. "I know." Marcus met me at the east stairwell after lunch. I handed him the note without a word. He read it once, folded it neatly, and put it in his pocket. "It's fine," he said. "Marcus." "It's fine," he repeated, but this time his voice held something harder, more certain. "I was going to tell people after prom. Maybe this just moves the timeline. I don't want you forced into this." He looked at me steadily. "I'm tired of being scared." Then, softer, "Give me until Friday. I need to tell my mom first." So I gave him Friday. Thursday night he texted me.
She cried.
Then she said she already knew and was waiting for me to come to her. A minute later, she asked if I was seeing someone. I said yes. She wants him at Sunday dinner. And then, "You free Sunday?" I smiled at my phone for so long it was embarrassing. "I'll be there." Friday morning, Marcus did something Westbrook Academy would probably talk about for the next 100 years. He went to his usual spot by the gym where his teammates gathered before class. He said something to them I couldn't hear. I watched surprise flicker across their faces, then acceptance, support, even relief. One of them hugged him. Another hit his shoulder with a grin. Then Marcus looked across the crowded hallway and found me. And he walked straight over. The whole place seemed to split open for him as he crossed it.
He stopped in front of me.
Jessie, bless her, stepped aside without a word.
"Hey," he said.
"Hey." Then he kissed me. In the middle of the hallway, in front of half the school. Not hurried, not uncertain. A real kiss, open and unapologetic. For one full second, the hallway went completely silent. Then it exploded. Not badly. Just shock, laughter, cheering, people shouting his name, people very loudly recalculating everything they thought they knew. When he pulled back, he looked calm, lighter somehow. "I told my team this morning," he said quietly. "And my mom last night. Priya already knew." He smiled a little. "Basically, everyone who matters knows." "What about whoever sent the note?" I asked. He shrugged. "Too late. There's nothing left for them to tell." I looked at him. This boy who had carried fear for so long and still found a way to choose himself anyway. "You're kind of unbelievable," I said. "I've heard that," he said, grinning. 2 days before prom, I got an anonymous message. Ask Marcus why he really transferred to Westbrook. Something about it sat wrong immediately. When I brought it to Jessie, her face told me the truth before she spoke. There was an incident at his old school, she said carefully. Someone found out he was gay before he was ready. It spread. It got bad. I felt cold all over. Later, I found Marcus sitting alone near the sports field after practice. I sat beside him. Someone messaged me, I said, about why you transferred. He went still. You don't have to tell me everything, I said. But I know it wasn't just family reasons. He looked down at his hands for a long moment, then finally told me. A teammate had gone through his phone. A screenshot got shared. The team chat turned into something cruel. The harassment lasted for months. His grades dropped.
He stopped eating.
His oldest sister noticed. His mother stepped in. Eventually, his family moved. I spent my first year here trying to disappear, he said. Just do well in football.
Keep my head down.
Don't let anybody close. What changed? I asked. He looked at me then, and the corner of his mouth lifted. You crashed into me in the hallway and called me present. I laughed despite myself. That was an awful line. It was, he agreed, but it made me laugh. The evening light spilled gold across the field. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said. He nodded once. I'm not sorry it brought you here, I added. Something open and unguarded passed through his expression. Noah, he said.
Yeah.
I think I'm in love with you. The whole world seemed to pause. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in me for weeks. That's deeply inconvenient, I said. He narrowed his eyes. You were about to say present, weren't you? I laughed.
No.
I was going to say that I'm in love with you too, and I was trying very hard not to make that your problem. He took my hand. How's that going? He asked. Terribly. He lifted my knuckles to his mouth and kissed them once. That somehow undid me more than anything else. Sunday dinner at Marcus's house was one of the most nerve-wracking things I had ever volunteered for. I showed up carrying 2 bunches of plantains because nerves apparently turned me into someone's overprepared aunt. Marcus opened the door, looked at the plantains, looked at me, and said, 2 bunches. I panicked in the produce section. He kissed my cheek. My mom's going to love you. His family did not make being calm any easier. His mother had Marcus's warmth and none of his restraint. His sisters were hilarious, relentless, and terrifying in a deeply affectionate way. The youngest, Temmie, looked at me for about 30 seconds before asking if I planned to marry her brother. Temmie, Marcus said, horrified.
What? She said.
It's a valid question. Dinner was incredible.
So, was the company.
By the end of the night, I felt less like I'd been inspected and more like I'd been folded into something. When Marcus walked me to my car, I turned to him and said, Your family is everything. I know, he said softly. Then he kissed me under the porch light, slow and easy, and I thought that maybe some things in life really could feel this right. Prom came 3 days later. It was the 4 of us, me and Marcus, Priya and her girlfriend Sasha. A perfect little group. Jessie cried when she saw us all together at pre-prom photos. I made this happen, she told anyone who would listen. You weaponize truth or dare, I reminded her. I used the tools available to me, she said solemnly. Prom was loud, ridiculous, over-decorated, and somehow perfect. Marcus danced with an ease I found both impressive and offensive. I danced like someone being held together by panic and momentum. At one point, his teammates formed a circle around us and cheered until I almost laughed myself off balance. Marcus caught me by the waist before I could fall. You are a disaster on a dance floor, he said. In my defense, your team is emotionally overinvested. They like you. That startled me more than it should have. Later, when the lights lowered and something embarrassingly sentimental started playing, we slow danced. I rested my head near his shoulder and thought about the boy who had once been forced out of his own story and who now stood here, fully inside it, choosing joy anyway. I'm glad you crashed into me, he murmured against my hair. I smiled. I'm glad you were so present. He laughed softly and kissed my temple. After prom, a bunch of us ended up at the lakeside park, sitting around in formal clothes, eating terrible snacks, and pretending we weren't all quietly standing on the edge of the rest of our lives. Marcus and I sat in the grass beside each other, our hands brushing now and then. "What happens now?" I asked. "We graduate," he said. "I probably go to Dalton. That's 40 minutes from state."
He looked at me.
40 minutes. Manageable, I said. Very. He was quiet for a beat, then added, "I told my coach about us this week." I turned to him. "You did?" Marcus smiled faintly. He said, "I know, Reed. I've known for 2 years. I was waiting for you to catch up." I stared at him. "So, everyone knew before you did?" "That's not how knowing works. You know what I mean." He laughed. Then he turned serious, reaching for my hand. "The difference is, before, someone else told my story for me," he said. "This time I chose." He squeezed my fingers. "And you're part of why I could." I looked at him for a long moment. "You're going to make me emotional," I warned. "You," he said. "Cool and composed Noah West. I have a reputation." He smiled, full and bright and gap-toothed. "Noah, you brought 2 bunches of plantains to my house because you were nervous. That could happen to anyone." He laughed again, and I decided, not for the first time, that I wanted to spend a very long time earning that sound. Later, as we walked back toward the cars, Jessie fell into step beside me. "How does it feel?" she asked. Ahead of us, Marcus threw his head back, laughing at something Priya said. He looked lighter than he had the day I met him.
Like he had stepped fully into himself at last.
I watched him, then smiled. "Like something that was always supposed to happen," I said. Jessie bumped my shoulder. "Day 800 and something paid off. I'm deleting your tally. You'll never find it."
She was probably right.
A few steps ahead, Marcus turned and started walking backward, looking at me over the distance between us. "You coming?" he called. "Yeah," I said. And I was. I'd been moving toward this for 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days, give or take. What waited on the other side wasn't perfection. It wasn't simple or finished or easy. It was real. A boy with a gap-toothed grin and too many hidden fears. A boy who climbed through windows, thought deeply about James Baldwin, loved his family hard, and laughed with his whole chest when he forgot to guard himself. A boy who needed patience.
Time.
Honesty. And somehow, wonderfully, that turned out to be enough. Actually, it turned out to be everything.